Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and I want to talk about the concept of the comfort game today. And namely, what has been my comfort game throughout most of my life, and that is World of Warcraft. And I've had a bit of a rocky journey the last few years in regards to this game, but I think this is a topic that deserves some discussion, especially in the modern day. Now, what is a comfort game? I mean, it's a good question to ask, you know, if we're going to talk about a certain thing, you'd want to at least have a definition for the thing. And I would argue a comfort game is the game that you choose to play when you just need to unwind. Like that one game you always find yourself going back to. It may not be a game you play for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours like I have with World of Warcraft, but the game that is pretty much the ace up your sleeve. If you need to have a good time, if you just need to mentally unwind and relax, what do you boot up? Now, I started World of Warcraft years and years ago, back at the beginning of Cataclysm, give or take a few months. And I actually had a friend of mine who got me into the game, telling me of his tales with his guild, of doing PvP, playing his Blood Elf Paladin, and telling me stories of the Death Knight and how cool they were, raising the dead, using icy wind to debilitate enemies. It sounded awesome. And whenever I watched gameplay of the game, I didn't know what the heck was going on. It was just all a bunch of swashes of colors on the screen to me, but I knew I wanted to play that game. And I would eventually come around to playing World of Warcraft, and funnily enough, turned out, I don't think my friend realized he was playing a private server, because I looked for months to find his server in the list of them, and I couldn't find them at all. And then he started telling me how Blizzard forgot about his server and all that. I'm fairly confident the guy was playing a private realm and just didn't know what that was, and thought it was an official realm. For those who may not be aware, a private realm or server is a server of the game that not Blizzard, someone else, is hosting. It's not an official version of World of Warcraft. So I found myself joining this game, this giant game, entering its like climax, like the biggest point it had ever reached and has ever reached. It was at the end of Wrath, beginning of Cataclysm. That was the highest concurrent play account, highest concurrent subscribers that World of Warcraft has ever had. I find myself joining this world, joining this game at that point in time. And I found myself joining that world alone because the one guy I thought that was going to be there with me, turned out, didn't even play the game. But dude, there was just something about Azeroth. Now, I have been playing video games since I was like 6 years old, and World of Warcraft wasn't even my first MMORPG, RuneScape was. But the seeds that were planted in, like, my gaming conscience when it came to RuneScape, in regards to being utterly fascinated by an interconnected world that a whole bunch of people took part in and explored together, I think those seeds really blossomed with Azeroth and with World of Warcraft, because I became utterly enraptured with the game immediately. I played numerous characters just to see what the starting experience was. I remember going through the Goblin starting zone for the first time ever and just having so much fun with it. It was the perfect blend between adventure and whimsy and all that Warcraft goblins are known for. And I remember doing the Worgen starting zone and just how cool it was. I was an adolescent teen boy, and you're throwing me into this world of paladins, death knights, and werewolves? Hell yeah, dude. I'm playing as a werewolf fighting zombies. You couldn't think of a better hook than that. It's impossible. You can't do it. And I remember beating the Worgen starting zone and thinking, dude, I cannot wait till later in the game that we come back, Alliance in tow, and retake Gilneas. Of course they're gonna continue this storyline, right? Well, technically they did. It just took about 8 years. Wait a minute, I forgot that Cataclysm was like 2010. It was actually more like 12 years. Oh my god, it was so long. But I digress. Like, I essentially leaped into this game into the deep end. I was watching videos by Jesse Cox and Total Biscuit and the Yogscast, just trying to figure out how the heck does this game work? How does it tick? How can I get better? How can I continue playing? I was running dungeons. I was leveling up my human paladin because I thought that was really cool. I was running like leather agility gear, getting roasted by people in dungeons, and I had to roast them back because of course I did. Because I was still fairly confident I was doing more DPS than they were. But it was so much fun. And I think looking back on it, one of the things that really grabbed my attention attention and kept me in regards to my interest in World of Warcraft, well, I guess it just was its aesthetic variety. It's something I really care about in a lot of games. If I look at any one thing for far too long, I just get bored, but this was the Cataclysm revamp for World of Warcraft, where they went over the original world with a fine-tooth comb and revamped it because a giant dragon burst forth from the center of the world and started this thing called the Cataclysm. It was cool. I remember watching that cinematic over and over and over again. Pain, agony. Dude, I had those World of Warcraft trailers memorized. I was so hooked into the game like I had never, and probably will never be hooked into another game like I was with World of Warcraft. And it only makes sense for those who were there at the time, who were there playing WoW, because there really is nothing like it. There's just something about Azeroth. And the leveling journey is something that I absolutely treasured and prized, because it felt like a great journey. You're going through so many different locations, experiencing all these different stories. John J. Keeshan and pretty much like the Rambo storyline in Red Ridge Mountains, or dealing with the people in Westfall, the Badlands and Deathwing burning the cave full of dragon eggs, Stranglethorn Vale with the dinosaurs and the Gurubashi troll ruins and architecture. The world just had this sense of wonder, and I think looking back on it, one of the skills I've tried to cultivate throughout my life was being able to accurately describe what I like about something and what I dislike about something. And that was not a skill that I possessed back then. It was just something about the world that really pulled me in and refused to let go. Looking back on it, I think just how diverse that world was really aided in keeping my attention and making me interested. Because you could go from Gilneas, which was pretty much just Bloodborne, where you play as werewolves fighting zombies, it was awesome, to Stranglethorn or Red Ridge, hopping over to Kalimdor with night elves and orcs and trolls and Tauren, oh my. And you deal with all of that, right? And that was the stuff that kept me wanting to play more of World of Warcraft. And the thing that really kept me eventually was the social element of an MMORPG. I remember spending a spring break trying to get my human paladin up to level 55 because I wanted to roll a Death Knight, because of course I wanted to roll a werewolf Death Knight that sounded awesome to me. And I got there, and then eventually I leveled up that guy, got him into Wrath of the Lich King, got him into Northrend, and I was in Sholazar Basin. Mind you, I was on a PvP realm that edged over to the Horde, and I was playing Alliance at the time. And I was getting ganked by a Horde player, and then from the sky descended this human paladin who came down, was max level, and one-banged this guy that was trying to gank me. We start talking to each other, he invites me to his guild, and it turns out that guild was a world PvP-based guild. This would be the first real guild I ever joined in my World of Warcraft tenure. For those who may not be aware, a guild is essentially a group of people that play together. Cut forward a few months because I was leveling slow as all hell, and I eventually made my way to max level on my Blood Death Knight Worgen. Since my guild was heavily focused on PvP, that's what I decided to do. I ran arenas with guildies, I did random battlegrounds, I did a lot of world PvP, and I eventually got a bunch of PvP gear. And a community was formed on my server. I would go to Goldshire and recognize people. There was this one guy who I always ran into when I was just AFKing in Goldshire, because he always challenged me to duels, 1v1s in game. And because I was a Blood Death Knight in Cataclysm, I was broken, because the gimmick of Blood Death Knight was that I could heal myself. And not just a little bit, I mean like every time I hit Death Strike, I would full heal. Pretty much even without vampiric blood. At least it felt like that. So I would always body this guy, and pretty much, if you were melee, you were not beating me in a 1v1 back then. There's only one person, or like one class I really struggled with, and that was a Holy Paladin, because they could just also self-heal, so normally those slog matches went on for 30 minutes. And there's so many moments from my time in that guild that I can look back fondly on. When I was getting ganked by two members of the Horde, so I dragged both of them, because I was Blood Death Knight, they weren't killing me. I dragged both of them to the other side of the zone, to the Alliance encampment, until they eventually gave up. Or when 5 people on the Alliance decided to challenge me to a duel, so we all headed to the Gurubashi Arena in Stranglethorn, where I proceeded to beat up on 4 of them for about half an hour. And that was the Holy Paladin that I was just talking about, because he was one of the 5. It would take about half an hour, but he would eventually kill me after I farmed the other 4 repeatedly. And we would do these pretty much guild events. A lot of what we did, we either organized with another guild that was our rival on the Horde side, or we would pick a building in Orgrimmar and we would all just go inside that one building, drop our AoEs, our area of effect spells, on the entrance, and just kill all the Horde as they try to come in and kill us, because we led them into a choke point. It was so dumb, but it was so fun as well. We'd go around killing all the Horde faction leaders. I remember taking a lot of pride in our kill of the Blood Elf guy. That was a ton of fun. Because getting into, like, Lorthamar's palace in Silvermoon City is a pain in the butt, right? Because you can't really fly, so you have to walk all the way into the city and then get to Lorthamar. And we managed to do that. We managed to kill him, and it felt good. I remember me looking down on his corpse as the entire guild just stood around him. Like, those are good memories, and those are memories that last way longer than you think they would at the time. So at this point in time, not only did World of Warcraft provide me an aesthetic that I really liked because of how diverse it was in its overall world construction and design, not only did it provide a bunch of stories that I really cared about, I now also had a bunch of people that I genuinely liked to play with. The MMO of the MMORPG was really shining for me. And then the day came. We decided to do the biggest PvP event our server had ever seen. It would be on the Isle of Quel'Danas, the homeland of the High Elves, now the Blood Elves. It would be hundreds and hundreds of players, half for the Alliance and half for the Horde, and we just charge at each other and just try and win. Just kill each other. Because why not? Victory or death. And we didn't want to die. I remember getting so hyped up and excited for that moment to come. It was marked on our in-game calendars. We were looking forward to it. Then I log in one day, after taking a break for a couple of hours to go do something. I log back in into Dalaran, and I'll never forget this, I was guildless. So I whisper some buddies from the guild, and they tell me that the GM and his little clique, who are leading the guild, had ninja looted the entire guild bank, took all the money we had accumulated together, and server transferred and got out of there. The guild was dead, and we would all just move on to our own separate ways. I would eventually, actually really soon after, just make a whole bunch of new characters on a different realm and go Horde this time, and I would be Horde for numerous expansions afterwards. There's a lot of people out there that would probably have just quit the game at that point, but the funny thing is that while that chapter of my World of Warcraft tenure did end on a sour note, that chapter still managed to really hook me into the game and make me enjoy the game, enjoy endgame, and see what it could be. And the funny thing is, there would never be another guild that I would join in World of Warcraft that I would care as much as that guild. But while joining World of Warcraft, I was pretty much like thrust into the deep end by myself, I now found myself submerged even deeper into that deep end, now also by myself still, because no one in my school played World of Warcraft. Nobody did. But why am I telling this? Why am I saying this? Because funnily enough, I've told this story before. It was right when I first started this channel back in 2019, because that point was approaching the end of my World of Warcraft tenure, because now we cut forward numerous years, and I had still loved World of Warcraft. I loved it in Mists of Pandaria. I really liked what was there with Warlords of Draenor. I loved the story there. It's just there was nothing to really do, and then Legion was really cool, but I started to feel my interest wane by the end of Legion. I managed to skate by Battle for Azeroth, and I just left full stop with Shadowlands because I was completely disillusioned with the state of the game. But I think the reason I managed to last that long was because of those times and those memories that I had back in Cataclysm. And I had a bunch of great times with the story and playing the game itself, because I did manage to find another guild. It just wasn't the same as that first guild that I had back in Cataclysm in Mists of Pandaria, which was the expansion immediately after Cataclysm. But it's like I had become so invested in the world and in playing the game. I didn't do much in the way of high-end content, I just liked being in the game. I liked leveling up a bunch of characters. You could call me an altaholic. And you could argue that's a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy. Where I devoted so much time and effort into the game, I just didn't want to leave it at that point. And I think to some degree that could be true. But I also still really genuinely enjoyed the game. Because when World of Warcraft was good for me, there was nothing really like it. I always like the feeling of building towards something, and I think that's one of the reasons I always gravitate to games like MMORPGs, and even now games like, say, Honkai Star Rail or like Wuthering Waves, because I like knowing that I'm still working towards something and having that sense of incremental progression. It's always a phenomenon I experience in regular games that when I beat the final boss and credits roll, I lose a lot of interest in doing any content at the end game in those respective games because I've beaten the game. My main sense of motivation to continue playing has now just kind of been removed. When it comes to a game like World of Warcraft, which is perpetually developed and fleshed out and expanded on, I always retain that feeling of wanting to play, wanting to get better, wanting to gear up more, wanting to collect more mounts or pets or transmog or whatnot. But eventually, I was so disillusioned with the state of World of Warcraft at the end of Battle for Azeroth and during Shadowlands that I just left. Enough had been enough, and then I tried replacing WoW with a bunch of other games, and I fell in love with a game called Final Fantasy XIV, which I still play to this day because I love that game as well. But it didn't scratch the exact same itch as World of Warcraft, despite being an MMORPG. Story-wise, it did. MMO-wise, it didn't. And I guess you could kind of call it a subplot in my gaming life, ever since I had left World of Warcraft way back when, was trying to find something that could scratch that itch, and I never really found it. I found a few things that could kind of scratch that itch a little bit. I got into gacha games a decent amount because, to some degree, they appeal to those same things I was looking for out of WoW, but it was never really the same. And I thought WoW would just never get better, because I can become so disillusioned with the state of that game for the longest time. And then, funnily enough, and I say longest time, next expansion, called Dragonflight, supposedly a return to form. There Be Dragons, the expansion pretty much. A complete overhaul in terms of the philosophical design and content output from World of Warcraft. Gone are the days of what was known as modular design, and design meant to be relegated to a single expansion and then just thrown away the next to be replaced by something else. Now they would focus more so on evergreen content and building up that foundation from essentially scratch with Dragonflight. Gameplay-wise, it looked far more appealing to me. Story-wise, a lot of damage had been done for me over the last few expansions, and a lot of story decisions were made that I found completely off-putting. And then the tone and atmosphere of Dragonflight was really hit or miss for me. There were some moments, I came back briefly to experience Dragonflight just to see what all the hubbub was about, and there were moments that I liked about it, but I thought too often and too regularly, the tone of the game just didn't have the same grit that it used to for me. That same fantasy charm. So I left again. Then the next expansion, the current one, called The War Within, and I had been following WoW and its state to some degree ever since I had left the game, because when you devote that much time and energy to something, it's really hard to fully let go. And I look at the state of the modern game of World of Warcraft, how they offer multiple versions of it, including classic servers for those older states of the game. I'm looking at the current design direction of World of Warcraft. I'm like, this appeals far more to me, and this feels far more similar to that old school feeling of Warcraft that I had way back when, and the aesthetic looks far more up my alley. So I decided to come back to The War Within and really try it out, and I fall in love with World of Warcraft all over again. And that same relaxed feeling that I got way back when by playing World of Warcraft is that feeling that I got again playing modern World of Warcraft. And is the current state of the game perfect? Absolutely not. There's a lot of issues they need to address, and I'll probably talk about that in a future video if I haven't even covered it yet. But I never played World of Warcraft for perfection, because it was never a perfect game. And while I did love the story of World of Warcraft, its storytelling was always garbage. Like, let's be really fair here. It had its moments, but that was what they were, moments. And playing through The War Within, the 20th year anniversary of World of Warcraft event, I felt that same magic and fun that I felt way back when. And I started to think about playing World of Warcraft even when I'm not playing World of Warcraft. And that was when I knew that, oh my god, its claws are hooked back into me, aren't they? Because it felt like every component to the game was reminding me of those initial moments, those first footfalls into Azeroth that I had all the way back when. Remember how I said one of my first characters that I really played was that human paladin that I utilized to get my Death Knight available to me? Death Knight and Paladin were my two favorite classes for the longest time. Upon my return to World of Warcraft, I decided to play Paladin. Different human paladin, but still a human paladin. And good god, its playstyle reminded me of how much fun I had with Paladin way back when. I had hated what they did to Paladin for the longest time, but this felt far more reminiscent to what I loved about Paladin way back when in Cataclysm. And like I said before, there's just something about Azeroth. Because when I look at the current state of the game, I'm like, this appeals far more to me. When I look at what they have teased and announced for the future of the game, I'm like, this still really appeals to me. I want to be there to experience Midnight and the Last Titan. I want to go back to some of my favorite locations. Quel'Thalas and Quel'Danas reimagined with modern World of Warcraft zone design. Absolutely, give me that. Going back to Northrend again in a few years, possibly with a bigger, badder scale. Absolutely, dude. We're getting player housing. Cool. I remember how hyped people were, myself included, for Garrisons way back when. If they can actually nail player housing, that would be massive for the game. But I digress. People at large will have different definitions of what comfort is, and what they want out of a game that they would define as their comfort game. But for me, I think what made World of Warcraft and what made Azeroth my comfort game for the longest time, and what has made it my comfort game yet again, was the fact that it was this interconnected world, this living, breathing world with a bunch of other people, with an aesthetic that is really up my alley, and enjoying that feeling of incremental progression. Getting better, knowing that when I play the game for even a few hours a day, I accomplish something that will add on to itself with all those other days into the future, and I really enjoy that feeling. All the while knowing there's cool stuff coming down the line that I want to be there and experience for myself. Now, I don't know if this feeling, this rejuvenated interest in World of Warcraft will start to fade over the next few months or so as I continue to play, but I know right now I am rather pleasantly surprised by just how much I have been enjoying World of Warcraft again when I thought I never would. And seeing not only World of Warcraft, but my other arguable comfort game, Halo, seemingly also go in a completely different direction, that does put a smile on my face, and we need to, see it to believe it when it comes to Halo at least. But the idea that my two favorite IPs from my childhood, Warcraft and Halo, could be coming back with new design directions that embrace what made them great to begin with. Dude, the late 2000s called, and early 2010s called, and I'm answering. They called collect, and I'm answering. I just hope that the conversation lasts more than a few minutes. But I like having a game that I know that I can always, even if I have very little energy at any given point in time, I can always go into the game and kind of mentally recharge, if that makes sense. World of Warcraft has a great structure for that. I can always just level up a new character, go do some old quests I may have missed out on, run some dungeons, now do some delves, because I love that system. Or try out the new raid, or do some PvP. There's a lot of things that I can do. Now pet battles as well, which is like a Pokemon-esque system in World of Warcraft. It's kind of cool. That's been the game since Mists of Pandaria, but I digress. It feels good to play World of Warcraft again. But I don't feel the need to play every day. I just choose to because I want to. At least right now. But I am a multi-gamer. World of Warcraft used to be a game that would take about 95% or 90% of my gaming time. And I don't think it'll ever go back to that spot, but this modern design, this modern direction, allows me to fully enjoy a bunch of other games, especially games that I still care about, like Final Fantasy XIV, or Wuthering Waves, or other single-player RPGs that I want to devote a lot of time and effort into, but it's always there, and I can always jump in and get something done, because while there are other games out there that I could technically do that with, they don't scratch the exact same itch that World of Warcraft does for me. And maybe it's a mixture of what I look for out of a live service game like World of Warcraft, but also the nostalgia that I have with World of Warcraft. It's probably a healthy mix of those two. But when a lot of people say, oh, you only like this game because of nostalgia, it always comes off like a bit of a negative criticism, that the game can't stand on its own 2 feet, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with nostalgia. I have a lot of investment, a lot of fond fun memories that I shared in this video, and a lot more that I haven't, when it comes to playing and experiencing Azeroth and playing World of Warcraft. Will WoW continue to be on the up and up, and will it continue to be this now comfort game that has kind of resumed its post for? Like, it's picked that mantle back up for me, kind of? Will it continue that, or will it go back to that design that made me eventually leave it to begin with? Time will tell when it comes to that. But I am just pretty happy that right now, it's my comfort game again. You know, it's kind of funny how I always choose to make the biggest yap fest videos when I'm trying to rest my throat because it's really sore because I threw it out during stream. So, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It'd really help the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below with what your favorite comfort game is, and what one of your favorite memories from that game is. I'd love to hear your stories and hear your thoughts and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. And I'm starting to realize that I don't think I ever particularly described what a comfort game necessarily is, and I don't think there's a real objective measure for that. It just kind of depends upon the individual, but maybe at the end of it all, when you can go on like I just have for World of Warcraft, maybe that itself tells a story and, you know, paints a definition. Bye-bye, everybody. Till we meet again.